Walt, this week, Lucid hit some turbulence. They hit turbulence and my fiber decided to go down. So a lot of turbulence all around. While we face turbulence, Waymo and Uber are battling out in DC. Why can't we be friends? Who knows? And then, lo and behold, it looks like, as we reported in our field reporting, we're getting more photos, that Tesla is preparing to ramp up Cybercab. So let's dive into it. A lot happening this week.
There is a lot happening, and you're doing this over your cell phone because your fiber was cut in your area. That's never pleasant. Hopefully, they have tools that can connect those strands. But given the amount of people that are out, you might be in for it for a little bit.
It's not nice, is what I will say. It is not nice not having fiber. There's no other way for me to describe that to you.
You know, in New York, they have signs everywhere that say "Call before you dig." Do they not have that in Florida?
No, the only signs they have in Florida are "Watch out for alligators." Where I live, there are no alligators, fortunately, but maybe an alligator got in there. Who knows?
Well, let's get to the news of the week, I guess, with Tesla. We did cover Cybercab 2 weeks ago. So by now and going into this week, you should have had employees starting riding in the Giga Texas campus. I think we've seen some evidence of that. But I think more interestingly, Grayson, I've seen reports in the last couple of days of the inventory of robotaxis available in Texas rising. It says, I think there was a July 15th report that came out from the Texas DMV that Tesla had 175 robotaxis registered in Texas. That's up from 42 on June 1st. That's a quadrupling in 6 weeks, quadrupling. And I think, according to some data I saw out there, there's 58 were added really in like the last 2 days. So have we hit this kind of pivot point? We've been kind of thinking that we might have gotten there, based on kind of what you saw in Miami. Are we at the pivot point here? Are we going to finally see Tesla start scaling up?
I don't know if we're at the pivot point, but I think if you want to use the baseball term, because we just had a really great All-Star weekend, is that we are at the inning one. And I would say when we're inning one, we're at the bottom of the first. I was in Miami for Robotaxi launch day. It counted roughly a couple dozen Cybercabs. Counted, I would say under 10, give you an estimate, under 10 robotaxis. And lo and behold, I go back 5 days later. Walt, there's over 30 to 40 of them there. So we're seeing it in Texas. We're seeing it in Florida. So I say Tesla is at the bottom of the first inning as they get ready to ramp up and scale. Another thing I noticed from doing another field report in Miami on day 5, my wait times, I don't know if this was no pun intended, were 5 minutes. And the greatest thing happened. One robotaxi said 1 minute wait, arrival time 4:20. I said, Elon, is this a sign? Is this a sign? 4:20 arrival time. And then I put a photo on X of my finger in the middle, and it said Star Ride. And a great commentator on X said, see, it's another sign. No response from Elon on X, but I just thought it was kind of cute and catchy.
I mean, the bottom line, though, is I think the demarcation number that you and I have provided is 100 cars in a market. So given some of these numbers that I've seen the last couple of weeks, it's possible that next week we can truly kind of check off Austin as launched if we can get some evidence that there's 100 cars out there on the road. Now, let's put some context around this. You know, AV Ride technically has 317 cars, according to the Texas DMV. You and I both know there are not 317 active commercially available AV Ride cars on the market. There's a lot of test cars. So I think, we have to kind of caveat that. But I don't think you put this many cars in the market. I don't know. It seems like we're kind of hitting an inflection point. It's kind of surprising that it hasn't been covered a little bit more, by the mass market. It seems like a pretty pivotal point, given it's been like a year since they launched this thing, and they've kind of been forgotten about because they hadn't done any type of scaling up.
Well, today, and I'm not making excuses for the mass market, SpaceX has the rocket launch. A lot of attention is looking down at South Texas for the rocket launch. Perhaps that's why, but I think it is a bigger inflection point than the market is really, truly grasping at this point.
Okay, well, we'll say we covered it here. Hopefully, I don't want to say first, but once again, early. Why don't we shift over to one of your expertise topics? and not because of Omega, because of your interest is what's going on in Washington D.C. Not at the federal level, I don't think. Right? This is at the D.C. level. There's a D.C. bill to allow commercial driverless ops, and it was introduced by a council member, this guy Charles Allen, back in May. And this updates the DC or the district's AV Act of 2012 to allow driverless testing and commercial driverless operations. So just to be clear, today Waymo and Zeus can only operate in DC with a safety operator aboard. Does this change things? And what are some of the requirements that are getting proposed here?
I think I'm going to be very polite, but maybe I won't be polite. I'll just be a matter of fact. Change things is an understatement. This puts a rule of books and says, okay, you have to do all of this in order to get a permit to operate commercially. That's where you can charge fares. You have to drive in the district over 250,000 miles. I'm not naming names, but there's only one company right now that's capable of doing that, not naming names. And you have all these other regulations that go around with it. You have the ability for class action lawsuits that can occur out of this. Not at mere you as the riders, but as the autonomous driving system there. There is a lot of language in that bill, a lot of called regulatory capture in that bill that benefits particular company and a particular set of individuals that do something for a living, which we won't get into because I don't want to get one of those fancy letters, but there is a lot of hubris, and it is a big, hot, stinking mess. And I know DC's a swamp, and so it does smell swampy.
So some of the requirements are a $5 million minimum liability insurance, crash data reporting within 8 hours for a commercial fleet. That seems like reasonable enough. You should know what the data is. 72 hours if it's a privately owned AV, so they're already looking to the future. I think there was some banter about $1 million application fee. I don't know if that's true or not. And then there's another tax, 15 cents a mile, which for those that know the economics, the unit economics, that's not a small tax. 15 cents a mile to go to the district, I guess, where they're going to allocate it to public transit and a number of other things. So you're right. It's a pile. There's a lot of piled up things. But I think, let me just zero in on the one that you talked about, this 250,000 miles. This gets back to what I've said before on why Waymo is not adding all of their cars to California to get to what I would call true scale. And they're doing 300, 300, 300. Because as you go to every new market and you're the first guy in, you can effectively establish the rules. So if the rules are, hey, I've got 250,000 miles in that market, that can close out competitors from quickly following you in that market. Am I saying that wrong?
Walt said the quiet part out loud. I got to emphasize this. Establish the rules in that market. You said the quiet part out loud. No wonder you're so darn good at what you do.
So, and I think the flip side of this is exactly why, and some of the feedback we got from Uber after past episodes when we talked about, kind of what they're doing, because they don't want, effectively Waymo to write all the rules. But this once again kind of underscores and I think brings to the forefront once again the current relationship between Uber and Waymo. Uber says this bill would effectively ban hybrid networks, and it's fighting for the opposite. One platform where a rider gets matched to an AV or a human. So you can see Uber's colors really showing in this kind of little local skirmish that's occurring in DC. I think there's a head of policy. I don't know how do you pronounce this person's name. Maybe you do. Where this person Curioso, I think, is claiming that one AV displaces 4 drivers. So obviously fanning those flames of populist concerns in order to try and get some hurdles put in the way of these autonomous companies.
Javi is a nice gentleman. I mean, I've known Javi going back to his Miami days, and Javi is a wonderful operator, but I just got to sit here and look at this from the outside, because I've never been on the inside of Uber, and saying, okay, Uber went from trying to disrupt the taxi cab industry, which it collectively did, to sitting there and saying, okay, now we're the 10,000 pound gorilla. We don't want to be disrupted. This is how we were disrupted. Let's try and put a playbook to ensure that autonomy doesn't disrupt us. It's coming, if you want to say, full circle, the strategy here.
Yes, it's classic NIMBY, Whereas someone, when they move to an area, then they want to keep everyone else out. And that's a good call out. Clappy hat to you. For a decade, Uber fought to keep drivers cheap and on contract. I mean, let's go back to kind of the AB5, which was a California law that would have made Uber's drivers employees and broken the contractor model. Uber fought that tooth and nail. And then you had Prop 22, which was this ballot fight, which I think they spent a couple $100 million on to keep them as contractors, and they won, and it was upheld in 24. And by the way, I support that, but it's just ironic, kind of how this has flipped now. Now that they're secured via Prop 22 and whatever exists in these other coastal markets, that they're going to try and use the same type of tactics that were used against them to keep the new entrants out.
I'll summarize it this way. Uber has a really great policy memory. I mean, that's really kind of the way to say it, which raises a lot of questions around. You and I have talked about this. I think actually going back to episode 1 is their fragmentation strategy. It's just, it seems to me it's just slow everything down until one of their fragmented partners can eventually catch up. That's how I'm reading this.
So the bottom line, Grayson, in DC is, how do you think this ultimately plays out in terms of this bill and the ability for autonomous companies to operate in the District of Columbia?
I think this is pure speculation. I think the bill dies, the bill doesn't get passed. And I do not think that you will be able to assign the bill not passing to Uber, to Waymo. At the end of the day, I believe that Uber, Waymo, and the rest of the AV industry, despite their infightings over the bill, will come together for the betterment of the Washingtonians and autonomy in general and kill the bill to stop a foothold with the trial lawyers that want a lot of egregious clauses in there that would overall have a very large negative impact on scaling autonomy in the United States. I think that they will come to that realization of what this could do. It could open Pandora's box.
Interesting, and I would amend that view and say just another indication that Austin and Atlanta, the two markets that Uber and Waymo are paired, are probably going to go the same way as Phoenix did. Clearly, a relationship that does not look like it's headed in the right direction, which is probably why Uber, you saw recently, just this week. I know the podcast posts on Saturday, had a major deal to buy Delivery Hero, more scale, more logos, really pushing into the food delivery side and obviously other goods and services. Dara's done a good job at diversifying that business. Uber earmarked about 2 billion euro, I think it was, in Germany through 2031, explicitly including AV initiatives. So AV is, a little bit a part of this, but really it's kind of diversification in foods as they're kind of managing this. Now, on the call that they did with the analysts, they highlighted that, look, even though this was a large deal, use of capital priorities, number one priority is still investing in autonomy. Obviously, if there's acquisitions like Delivery Hero and others, they'll do those. And then obviously you have capital return, which they still believe they can issue a lot of capital return. So I think, I don't know if I've heard, I'd have to go back. I don't know if I've heard them specifically say autonomy was at the top of the list. It's certainly been clear based on their actions. I'd have to do a little AI analysis of past transcripts to determine whether that's new. But certainly this whole narrative of free cash flow, where for our longtime listeners, in the past, we've pointed out when they've talked about it, hey, don't worry, we're going to keep buying stock back while investing in these autonomy companies. I kept highlighting this, as more dollars went elsewhere. What was your take on the Delivery Hero?
I watched the interview that Dara did on CNBC. I thought that was very well done. I'll say very well orchestrated from how he expressed it. To me, it just seems that Uber is building on the strength of Uber Eats wanting to expand that business and grow it into Europe. I love how you said it, more logos, because there was a lot of assets there. The interesting thing that you highlighted is, the allocation for autonomy. If you listen to past earnings calls or if you read past transcripts, you would always see the terms or hear the terms priority or strategic. And now you're actually getting the real allocation terms. And then Germany specifically, so that raises the question there that I look at. Uber has a very public partnership with Momenta. Momenta is ramping up operations in Germany. Could some of that money be potentially allocated towards the Momenta operations in Germany? Because the German markets of Berlin and Munich, are, as we both know and Omega has uncovered, are becoming hot markets for autonomy in general as Waymo looks to potentially expand to Germany as their corporate filings have disclosed.
Well, Uber's going to maintain Delivery Heroes Berlin headquarters and German workforce through 29 at least. So yeah, Germany is, maybe we'll have to do some field work in Germany. Obviously a lot going on there. As an aside, one of their autonomous delivery partners, WeRide, who, they do have these street robots, which we've posted videos about, launched operations in Miami, again with Uber Eats. So this relationship that Uber has in the food delivery with these robot companies, 60,000 Uber trips for WeRide, 200 plus cars, 1.3 million miles. This is different than the challenges that they face with Waymo and Tesla and some of these other autonomous companies. There's a real opportunity for them to really leverage autonomy on the Eats side of the business. So perhaps they should start leaning into that more. I think I saw Coco as well launched in an East Coast market this week. So good opportunity there for Uber on the autonomy side.
I think the autonomy side and the demand aggregation narrative holds up for the Eats side of the business. So I think it's very good. It's a very positive that Uber is investing in autonomy for the Eats side of the business. Because on the Robotaxi side, which we'll get into in a minute, I don't think it's there. And then Rob Grant and I have been discussing this quite a bit, is when, say, take WeRide, when they become big enough brand, does the demand generation narrative go away? That's potentially. And then Uber can say, look, well, we have the Eats business, and that look at all the demand that generates. So that, I don't know. I think it's a very wise move, and perhaps Dar is seeing something in the tea leaves that we're starting to catch on to here with Robotaxi actually being smaller and delivery potentially being bigger.
I mean, I still think there's an opportunity for Waymo and Tesla just to send those cars to deliver food. We've talked about some of the business opportunities that spring out of that earlier, which we won't delve into now. But the in that case, if you think about Nuro, who had cars or vehicles like WeRide, like Coco, that were not on the sidewalk, that they were on the street, those had challenges. So maybe cars will fit that bill. So maybe they have future competition. But right now, I think you're right that this Uber Eats business can kind of exploit some of the autonomous business. Server robotics, obviously another one out there. It's coming down from drones as well. That's available to them. So good luck there. So let's move on though in terms of Uber in this first priority being autonomy. One of the companies in the autonomy world that they threw a bunch of money to was Lucid in their partnership with Nuro, and where they've invested $500 million into Lucid. And earlier this week, we had a mega drop in Lucid stock. It was almost down like 60% intraday on the 14th. One of the worst days ever for that company. Why? You had a random website, which I think you might be familiar with. I'm not as. Citing that Alex Partners, a company that Lucid, in fact, did hire, was weighing Chapter 11 or that they're going to go private. The stock got cratered on that. Now, Lucid has subsequently come out and said that's completely false, filed an 8K, cited all their liquidity. It's ripped back 30%. I think it's up another 10 or 15% the second day. So it's bounced back. It's still a question, right? This is Lucid is Nuro's partner. We question that being kind of the primary risk in that relationship historically. I've been in situations like this in the past where it depends on the wording. Like, okay, did you ask them or didn't you ask them? And everyone claims, well, I didn't specifically ask him to evaluate Chapter 11. At the end of the day, like, you hire a restructuring person, I would guess that that's going to be on the agenda. Now, they were pretty precise in their 8K language denying that, so whatever. We'll just have to see how that plays out. But clearly, people already had those kind of risks associated with Lucid for the stock to react that quickly on that news story.
Well, comment on the blog or the news story. To me, the underlying thing which you highlighted is the risk. And there is a very large risk for both Nuro and a very large risk for Uber if that situation were to happen. Do they go back to the drawing board, or where do they go? To me, it's just you want to call it an emphasis of a risk. While the risk was quote unquote debunked, it still exists based on the current shape of the company.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, you're hiring a company that I don't know whether it's a restructuring a company, whatever, but something to evaluate the entire company. You just changed a bunch of your management team, right? It's not like things are going smoothly at Lucid. And, look, this is, to your point, an important partner. Like, this is one of the leading Uber partners. This is someone we expect to potentially be driver out by the end of the year, have 150 cars mid-year. This is like, Nuro is the real deal. Hopefully, Lucid is not going to hold them back, frankly. And, if you get back to the priorities of cash, like, if Lucid needs cash, my guess is that Uber's going to be there to hit that button to give them more money just based on the progress there. I mean, even in recent weeks, we've seen the Uber team out at Nuro testing, with this Lucid car.
We have. And the fact that Nuro's sitting there posting a very public video of Dara and Jay-Z is another signal. The one thing I'm looking for in the market, looking for tea leaves, looking for an X post or any sort of indication, when does Nuro publicly begin to explore an additional OEM partner? That's something I'm looking for. I've been in the vehicle multiple times. I've been to the Las Vegas racetrack. The tech's real. The partner risk is unfortunately also very real too.
I mean, I think they're already looking for one. I'm guessing that they will have one within, I'm going to put it out there, within 6 months, they'll have a second partner. But in this case, it takes time, right, to develop the new partner. You want this one to work. And I think the upside of all of this is, with all the turmoil at Lucid, like, the importance of Nuro is that much higher, right? Nuro can deliver 35,000 vehicles. That's part of this Uber Nuro Lucid contract. That's a real number for a company like Lucid. So if anything, in a way, I'm going to say the silver lining here is that this is a positive, just because Nuro is that much more important to Lucid.
That's a very valid point. And now I'm going to ask you again, this is a very hypothetical question. Could Lucid just end up becoming a robotaxi manufacturer, depending on where this all goes at the end of the day?
I mean, is Tesla effectively becoming a robotaxi manufacturer? They're effectively shutting down lines, and we see a bunch of cybercaps come off. We'll see what the future is, Grayson. I'm very bullish, so I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities. And again, when I was looking at the market cap that was left at Lucid, during the sell-off, relative to the amount of money that Uber put in, it's effectively a rounding error if Uber ever needed to just fully take control of this thing. But that's definitely not something that I think that they would prefer to do. It would only be something out of necessity. Why don't we move on to one of Uber's more successful partners, unfortunately internationally, which is WeRide. And on July 13th, it began on-road testing. Again, this is level 2++. So this is like the what you would call, some people would call ADAS, the supervised personal use of autonomy that they co-developed with Bosch in Germany, France, and Japan. This isn't a robotaxi. It's for consumers, but this is, which we've talked about before in terms of WeRide. This can create like a nice cash engine for them as they continue to expand on their fully autonomous stuff. So the WeRide tweet was, what works in one market may not work in another. That's why global validation matters. So good on them for getting into multiple markets. They're kind of like a mini Waymo, right? And entering a bunch of these markets.
WeRide's scaling globally. They're Road to Autonomy Robotaxi Index Component Company, and you look at their publicly available data, they're doing very well. And for, with the pushback we'll get, I'll just remind the audience, WeRide's publicly traded. Go through their SEC filings. All the data's there. They're truly scaling, and I like their approach because they're using the L2++ business as a cash driver as they build out their robotaxi business. They're basically using it, in my opinion, to fund it. And it's the same thing we saw with Momenta that had a very successful IPO in Hong Kong. Same business. And let's not forget the 10,000 pound gorilla in the room that does that. Tesla. Yes, I know the FSD take rates are not the greatest in the world, but that L2++ business for Tesla, in my humble opinion, is driving a lot of those vehicle sales.
What do we have on the foreign autonomy desk?
The foreign autonomy desk, we're going to Hong Kong this week. If you want to call the city-state of Hong Kong, aka China, has issued 63 autonomous driving licenses to 7 companies. That's according to government data there from Hong Kong. And out of that, Baidu has one of those licenses. They've driven approximately 149,129 miles in Hong Kong with safety drivers. Want to point out the caveat because I love fine details. Under the way that the Hong Kong autonomous vehicle regulations are written, the system can only be engaged on pre-approved roads. No details from the government. That means pre-mapped or what it means. It just says pre-approved roads. So that's something really interesting to watch there.
Okay, that's good for China. Now, what else? What other parts of the world are we? I see something here from the home of Borat.
Yes, and no, I'm not going to wear that outfit. And everybody knows what that outfit is. I like hats, not that outfit. We are going to Kazakhstan. Why are we going to Kazakhstan? No, we're not going to visit Sacha Baron Cohen, aka Borat. We're going there to tell you about what Baidu's doing there. Baidu's expanding to Kazakhstan. And so why is that important? You might say, why Kazakhstan? Now, this is an interesting fact because I love details. Kazakhstan is home to over 15,000 manufacturing and industrial companies. 15,000. I'll make a prediction here, Walt. Baidu will start manufacturing robotaxis in Kazakhstan within the next 12 to 18 months, and I would expect a press release or some sort of formal post on X within the next 3 to 6 months.
These are the type of actions that Waymo and others need to be making, getting OEM construction in countries that can deliver you inexpensive vehicles. But I digress. Waymo's still doing a great job.
Everybody's doing a great job except for my fiber man. Ay, caramba, we're still doing this over cellular. I don't know how we did this whole show over cellular. So hopefully by the time we get together next week, the fiber man will have fixed the fiber at my house. Living without 10 gig is hard, but until then, what do we need to look for next week? Because a little birdie told me there's a lot of stuff coming next week.
Well, I think first of all, I want to just chide you because our Tesla listener base, I think is going to be very upset that you don't already have a Starlink as a backup to your fiber. So hopefully you'll be, by the next show, you'll be able to have your Starlink fiber backup. And then we won't have these issues. But I think the cellular network, who's your cellular carrier that is responsible for this episode?
I want to thank T-Mobile because T-Mobile's working and it's doing a fantastic job. So the Uncarrier network is doing a fantastic job making Autonomy Markets possible this week. So thank you to T-Mobile.
There you go. You can also get a T-Mobile 5G hotspot as well as a backup. But go for the Starlink. It's more fun. You can take it around with you wherever you go in your travels. A field report. We'll do multiple field reports. When we go to these cities, we'll also try Starlink in all these different cities. Okay, so for next week, earnings is on. We got Google. We got Tesla. We got General Motors. We haven't heard much of Sterling Anderson. Has he fallen back in his CEO aspirations, Grayson?
I don't know. As you and I know, GM is a highly, highly well-managed, well-run corporate machine. And when you're in a corporate machine, you can't say a lot.
We also have, I think, next week, what we started with. I just feel like we're going to get more information on this Tesla scaling. I feel like next week could finally be the week where we can officially say that Austin is a real deal. It's got its 100+ cars. What do you think?
Potentially. Or does Elon announce on the earnings call that non-paying members of the public can begin to ride in Cybercab in Austin? Does that happen?
Either way, it could be a big week.
It's going to be a big week, and I will be back here with either Starlink or fiber. Either one, the show must always go on. The future is bright. The future is autonomous. The future is manufacturing and scaling robotaxis. Walt, until next week.